students. They are very much into this. What else can we, how many are you in Codacy now?
95.
95. And you are the CEO.
I am the CEO. It's good to check, but I am the CEO, yes.
And nowadays you work at home, or do you work in your office usually?
We're fully remote. We do have an office here in Lisbon, but we're fully remote. We have people all around Europe and even the US.
So you work at home. That's the future, yeah. You have oh, that's great. So you have also in the US, not only in Europe, you enter in the US market too. This is interesting. In the software industry, I think is more common, because in other industries, in general, companies start in Europe, and then maybe when they really reach a huge size, then they move to the US. But it's not in the software industry. I don't think this is the case. I'm telling that because, I am also an entrepreneur and invested in a project related to civil construction. We are going to sell our startup this year, but we are very much focused into Europe. We don't, enter in the US market with a product like we have, it's an energy saving product. And we think that is completely, impossible. But we see that in the software industry, this is much more, the US market is really attractive. Anyway, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. And we have the exchange rate problem of the dollar, but basically the American market is very compact. It's a red ocean market. In our product, we have like the certifications that we need, as a product that really saves energy and so on, and the patents and all this increases very much the investment needed in the US market. So now we are going to sell our product to a company that makes like $400 billion per year. And then they have the capacity of selling our product or saving energy product worldwide. But the software industry is completely different. Yeah, the logic is completely, you don't need to have warehouse, you don't have to have production, you don't have to buy raw materials. It's much simpler to grow. But it's
true.
So, Jamie, how are your markets distributed? Is it primarily US based, or is it global?
Well, we started addressing a global market from the very beginning. We didn't really constrain any of the marketing or any region-based approaches in the very beginning. And so today we have a good sample. 55% of our revenue comes from the US. The rest, which approximately is 25 to 30%, comes from Europe. And then the rest is really throughout the rest of the world. We have Singapore, we have Japan, we have Germany, we have London, UK. We have Spain, we have France. I mean, many countries we have companies using us.
Great, that's great.
Great. So I guess, Fernanda, it's already time. It's already 2:10. So I think we can start. So Jaime, over to you, and you can tell us your story in the way that you find most.
Yeah. First of all, we would like to thank you very much to accepting our invitation for this inspirational talk. We are very glad to have you here. Jaime is a software engineer from Technical. He started his business 10 years ago, and he already managed to raise 29 million euros in money for Codacy, and his main business area is security, quality of engineering software, and best practices in these areas. Anyway, it's great to have you here, and let me pass the word to you. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thank you, Anish, and thank you, Fernanda, for inviting me. So, I don't have a lot of structure in this, so I'll tell the story as I remember, without a lot of flair or presentation, or I don't have slides. Also happy to answer any questions as you might have it. So I guess maybe the format is to put it in chat. Happy to tackle them. So my name is Jaime. I'm CEO, co-founder of Codacy. Just a bit more context there. Codacy is a company, 95 people around the world. As Fernanda said, we raised 29 million. We have 10 years of history, 10 years of learnings, tons of mistakes. And we have approximately getting close to 1,000 customers around the world, with some of the largest names that would be surprising to many of us. I can't tell some of them, but we have names that would be very surprising to you to know that they develop software. And that's connects to one of the reasons why we started the company. But like we'll get there. So back in 2012, 2011, I was in Technico. I've from the very beginning, when I was young, I knew that I wanted to be a software engineer. I knew that I wanted to program. I knew that I wanted to go to Technico. I knew that I wanted all of that. So I did my degree, like many other people do, and then at the end, when I came to choose my master thesis, one of the things that was, I guess, an opportunity was I was working at the time at the information system of Instituto Superior Técnico, and that's a system called Fenix, which is essentially an information system that manages not only the website, but also the courses, the enrollments, people, students, teachers, like the whole school life is managed in that amazing information system. And that is actually used by many other universities. And so I was recruited as a student. I applied actually, and so I worked there. I had a scholarship to work and develop some features for that information system, and that's how they also operate and scale. They would hire the students to develop part of that software. One of the things that was quite interesting at the time was that, well, because they hired students, the shelf life, the time that they would spend with the project was not very lengthy. So people will leave, well, after some time, then go to the industry, and so one of the ways that the amazing developers responsible for the system would have to teach new students was, look, you want to develop this functionality. The best way for me to explain that to you is to tell you, go to this part of the code base. It's done there, copy and paste it, and adapt it to your use case, right? So that was a considerable amount of copy paste at that time, copy pasted code, and that was the beginning really of my master thesis. Was I wanted to research copy pasted code, is cloned code. How much of the code base, how much of any code base is actually copied code? And turns out there's always, every single code base has like 20-30% of copied pasted code, cloned code as it's called. And so that was the beginning of master thesis. The master thesis was really trying to manage that over time. And so as you imagine, some of you I hope are software engineers, code evolves throughout time. And so as not only code evolves, but also the duplicate code also evolves throughout time. And my master thesis was, well, when you fix a problem, when you fix an issue, I could identify 10 other places where you could fix that same issue as well. And so that was the beginning of the thesis. We had some interesting results. We put it running for some very interesting open source projects. We even found an issue documented in my master thesis where we proposed a developer of the Linux kernel, which is obviously a huge, amazing, one of the most recognizable pieces of open source written in human history. And that was a confirmation from a developer that it was an issue as well. So that was a great result. So that was really the beginning, was something that would be helpful in managing duplicate code. One of the things that at that time, I guess one of the opportunities that I had at that time was I had a friend who is 80 years older than me, who was also equally passionate about software, programming languages, coding in general. And we would, his name is João Caixaria, and we would stay up late, sometimes at 3, 4 a.m., just talking about programming, talking about programming languages and trade-offs and decisions and all that. So obviously he had much more experience than I had at the time. But when I told him that I was doing this master thesis, what he told me was, well, look, that could actually be a service. We could put that running as a service in the cloud for people to use it, for any software developer to use it. And at that time, you had already GitHub, which is a service, which is a host of source control manager that hosts all code for, I guess, what, 70–80% of the of companies out there. So GitHub is already flying and growing quite rapidly. And so the opportunity was, well, we could provide a service that could really help developers identify and manage quality of their software, not only in duplicate code. That was really the beginning, the starting idea, but also for any type of programming languages, for any type of results, whether it's security, best practices, code style. That was really kind of the company in the very beginning. So we started, and over I guess the first year and a half was very rough, was very difficult, because there was nothing. We had a simple product. It was not, to call it a product is I guess it's very, we shouldn't be calling it a product as we look at back now, but it was a beginning of a few scripts that we were running, and we had no customers. We had very little product. So researching the market, but also fundraising. The very beginning was very difficult, because the 0 to 1 in these things in startups is the most difficult part of it, because you have to convince the world, and part of that you have to convince yourself that there's actually an opportunity, that this is worthwhile, all the while suffering the pressure of competition, which many times only exists in your head, and other people doing things that might be similar, close to what you're doing. And so we essentially started creating really this product, and we really got lucky to get into an accelerator. So the company, I guess, would be a very different shape, or maybe even non-existent, if we didn't get into Seed Camp. Seed Camp was the first really angel investor that we had. They invested very little money, 25,000 euros. But for us, that was a huge amount of money. With that, we actually were able to kickstart a number of things in the company, to build a new iteration of the product, start focusing more on customers, to regain some conversations. That momentum allowed us to actually raise the first institutional round, which was with our investors that we still have today in our board. And that's our Millar Venture Partners and Faber Ventures. They're still today with us at this time, 10 years after. And so I guess that's really the beginning. But you know, there's tons of lessons, or there's tons of things, or tons of mistakes that I've made. But I guess one of the things, looking back, it was really hard to do that journey of going through student directly to starting a company. You know, you see that romanced, you see that romance in terms of stories, and you know, you read about Mark Zuckerberg and all that, and you think, well, I can do that as well. And you likely could, but it's really painful. It's really difficult, because you have to learn so many things, make so many mistakes in order to operate well. And so, you know, I continue telling a little bit the story. We started getting our first customers after that first, I guess, pre-seed round. And it was really difficult, because we as engineers, we are good at designing solutions, but sometimes we're not really taught or practiced in observing the problems. And today, my opinion is that a great entrepreneur is an expert in the problem, is obsessed with the problem, obsessed with the pain that the customer, the user is having. Because the solution could be as simple as a WordPress, or the solution could be as simple as a newsletter, or a simple page. It doesn't need to be, you know, the most complicated solution, very complex. It sometimes the simplest ways is really enough if you understand the problem well. And in the very beginning, we didn't. The very beginning was us building solutions to then ask questions, where asking questions is so much cheaper, right? In software, when you develop, there's like a 10x multiple on every single phase of software. So when you define requirements, that's like 1x. It's so easy to ask questions. When you start iterating and start building prototypes, then that's 10x. When you build software, that's 100x. When you put software in production, that's 100, sometimes even 1000x. That's why, for example, companies that operate in post-deployment, it's so much painful, that stage, because things are already running, customers are using, right? And so that's why it's so important that entrepreneurship starts, the foundation of it is talking to customers and prospects and developing those relationships with people that can answer questions, that can tell you, in very clear terms, what is and what is not useful, and what is and what is not painful. For us, it took us a long time. For me, it took me a long time to understand that. And so we did that through coding, and it's so much more painful. And so it took us a long time to really understand. And then it took us more time to develop the infrastructure of analyzing code. So we today, with 1,000 customers, we have billions of lines of code that we analyze every day. It's a scale of operation that is fairly large. And so to do that, we had to invest over the last few years in software infrastructure that was able to do that. That took time. And that took trial and error. We would onboard a customer. The first customer we had, there was a company in Germany, and a person by the name of Wolf. They reached out to us after we launched the private beta. I think it was on the Next Web, on TechCrunch. And they really liked the idea, and they signed up and said, look, we want to have your software, but it needs to run inside their own infrastructure. It's called on-prem. And overnight, João Queixeria and his team developed a quick solution to get the software running inside the customer's infrastructure, which today is unthinkable, right? Today, for us to do that type of cycle with such complexity would be would be unimaginable. And so we did that. We pushed out a software version. The customer was happy-ish, was okay with that solution, but it wasn't great, right? It was really the beginning, and so they didn't stay long with us, unfortunately. But that was also the beginning of us understanding how to operate as a startup with customers, and that every single customer and every single customer relationship is an opportunity for you to actually get in deeper into the problem that you're solving. And so when you're having conversations about what is not great about our solution, or what is stopping you, or what is really frustrating right now, those are the most important moments, which is what you're improving. You're getting more knowledge, you're getting more information about the customer perspective. And so, yeah, that was the first customer. We still have that invoice, and over time we started scaling, started getting more companies to sign up. We started getting more knowledge about the market as well. And me personally, this was also a journey, right? So made many mistakes when it comes to managing customers, to hiring, to firing, to fundraising, to all of that, right? So today we're in a solid moment. We have one of the things that we always try to do is we always try to be very financially responsible. So we don't like, quote unquote, to bet the house. We don't bet the house in risky bets. We'd like to do things consistently so that the company continues always taking steps forward. And so the company is always in a financial stable position. Today we're injecting this capital that we just raised to grow the company substantially over the course of the next few years. We have a vision that is quite exciting. We have people that have just joined us from excellent profiles, from excellent companies as well. Happy to answer any more questions. I guess this is all that comes to mind about my story. I have many lessons and many mistakes that I made.
I have a question. So you work in partnership with your customer, developing the software, or anyway, it's a tailored solution for each customer.
No.
You have a tailored
No.
solution.
No. So we build software that is automatically applicable to any single customer out there. So there's no tailoring of our solution. It's really, you buy the software, you start analyzing code, and there's no people involved behind it.
And what does this software do? Solve bugs problem, security problem, identify like duplicate code.
So the first product we brought to market, which is, we call today that product Quality, analyzes code, and from that analysis identifies issues, whether those are best practices, code style, security, basic bugs, but it also could be, for example, test coverage, which is a percentage of how much your code is being tested, which is an important metric for many companies, or code application, code complexity, etc. So that's the first product we brought to market. That's fully embedded also into the workflow of developers. And then we brought a second product to market in 2021 that beyond just the code quality, the code aspect, we also measure engineering performance. So the team working and the processes and the highest level metrics that are available. So we also brought a product to market to help that.
Now we have the idea of the low code. So the industry is going to make their own codes, basically. So in this case, I think product quality would be even more important in the case of low code. So am I right on that perspective? Or not?
Yes, the idea of low code is that you spend less time looking at code and you spend more time at the abstractions that these companies offer. So when you think about a company like OutSystems, they build a much higher level abstraction over writing your own code. Like either you could write it in Java or C++ or C#. Instead of that, you write it in their abstraction level, which is so much more productive, right, and efficient. You get a go to market much faster. Whether I think that affects quality, whether you are shipping code in writing your own code, which I can't tell you the percentage of the market, but I would guess 75, 80%, maybe even 90% of the market actually writes lines of code, right? Vis-a-vis low code, quality is always a thing, right? Because it's if you ask someone to actually describe what quality means, it depends really on the subject, depends on who's describing it, it depends on many things. Sometimes in the time of the week or time of the year. And so what we think is that there's always going to be space for doing things better, always going to be space for doing things well. And if over the last 10 years or 15, there was focus on getting fixing things late into the process and software delivery, which is software is already deployed and now I'm kind of just firefighting. We think that over the next 10 years are going to be much more about preventing issues, right? And so the focus that is so much cheaper on the early stages of software development, that's going to be where more and more companies are going to be focusing on in the next few decades, I think. Whether it's low code or writing code. Today, we don't support any low code solutions, or we don't target them particularly. You could apply to the generated code, but that's not really a point. Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen regarding that market? I don't know.
And your business model, how do you make money? You sell your service through website online?
Correct. We sell it's all software as a service. You buy a license. The license is paid on the base of number of developers that you have. So if you have 10 developers, you pay a price per developer, and that's on a monthly or yearly account.
I see. Can you show us where can I buy your license?
Sure. Well, you can go to Codacy.com.
Or maybe let me see Codacy.com.
Yeah.
.com.
You know, but the idea is also this: it's you could always buy the solution, but what we really like to see is that people try the software. We give a trial to everyone, and the Codacy is completely free for open source projects, right? So if you're a student and you want to try out the product, you can go and use it for free for your open source projects. We like to see people trying the software, right, and seeing and getting that embedded, and then you can upgrade and get more value.
I'm going to do a share screen. Let me see if I managed to. So I come to your page. Oh my goodness. I come to your page and then I start free trial. Okay. That's good. I see. Interesting. And here you can, so, so you have your customer is business to business, so B2B. Public relations must be a very important, like, how do you contact these companies? LinkedIn? That's it? Well, or do you go to conferences? How do you reach these business customers?
We spent a lot of time over the last years building our presence online. So when you search for static analysis, or when you search for quality, or when you search for, you know, particular use cases of maintaining, ensuring quality in software, you're going to find us. You're going to find our product, and you're going to find some content that we wrote. You're going to find some white paper that we wrote as well. And we're going to suggest a few things for you, right? So we're going to give you content so you can learn, and also teach you about our product, right? So because of that, 98% of our business is inbound, is companies coming to us and to know more about the product, to buy, well, it's not social media, it's more it's content, it's really placement in ads, it's placement of our content, yes, in social media as well. We'll also use some events and place or know-how and expertise there as well. And what we try to do is really position the product to a few use cases. So for example, if you're looking to standardize, you have a large company with large teams, many products, many time zones of developers working. You want to make sure that every single developer or every single product is developing with the same criteria. Well, we're great at that. We can guarantee the same requirements regardless of the time zone or products or programming language, right? And so when you search for that, for example, in Google, we're going to be positioned in that. We want to be a part of that conversation, because that's the moment of decision, when the buyer's going trying to decide. Sometimes, you know, this is us also learning more about the market, but what we find typically is that developers, developer managers, team leads, they get tasked to identify a solution to measure code quality, or they are tired of not knowing how code quality is, and they're trying to help the team get a better understanding. When they search for solutions, that's where we interject. We insert ourselves into that moment to say, hey, evaluate us as well. Evaluate us and see how that could help you. And then we jump into a sales process, which is a whole funnel, but that's the process.
There is a student question, Pedro Cerqueira. Am I right? Can you ask your question, Pedro? Go ahead, Pedro. Please.
You just need to unmute your microphone, Pedro, for speaking.
And also your camera. We want to see you. Pedro, are you listening to us?
I don't know, maybe Pedro had some issues.
He's having some technical issue.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to ask any question, just raise your hand. And Jeremy, I had a question meanwhile, till we get more students to ask questions. Sure. I wanted to understand in a little more depth about your product value proposition. You mentioned about you helping to improve code quality, but in which aspects? Is it like bug identification? Is it how does your product actually help some of these companies?
So we we are most valuable in a moment where the team or individual developers are reviewing their code. So as part of any modern software development process, after you're developing a feature or you're in the process of developing a feature and you ask the team to review some of the changes that you made, typically in a process that's called a pull request, which is, hey, I have some changes. Can you please review them and then merge what I have contributed so that it can go into production? In that particular process, what we found was that companies were spending 20 to 30% of their time reviewing code. And that process was quite time consuming. And so what we did was try to help in that particular process, review everything that was either critical or could be automated. And so everything that relates to code style, best practices, basic security, code coverage testing, all of these very important metrics and all these very important code analysis rules get applied in that particular moment. And so that use case of I need to review my code or I'm waiting for people to come and review my changes, we unblock many of those conversations. And we enable developers to come and see, well, I just shipped my code. I merged it into GitHub, onto GitHub. And before even people tell me, Codacy is the helpful people at Codacy are coming in to tell me that, I forgot this important update, or I forgot that the formatting is not good enough, right? So I need to reformat my code. More and more, these are being automated, but what we find is that in the 10,000 code analysis rules that we apply to every single line of code that gets changed, that's a really powerful thing. And that's evolving almost daily. And so, yeah, that's how we really help.
Okay, there is a question from Christina on our chat. I don't know, Jamie, can you also see it on your screen?
So Cristina Ferreira just put a question. Can you see, Jaime? Desculpem, eu tenho uma
Como
pergunta,
acha
mas
que
não
o crescimento
consigo.
de tecnologias com o GitHub Copilot dos comentários de IA ajudar afeta a qualidade do software produzido? E como é que a qualidade se vê nesse cenário? It's a good question. So the question essentially is, in a world where in the advent of GitHub Copilot and other artificial intelligence tools, either for writing or also for reviewing, how do we position our company? It's a really good question. We have a few teams that are actively looking at that at the moment. I still have to form kind of an opinion there, because what we're discussing here is that for the companies that are shifting and pushing software and really shipping solutions and products, at the end of the day, they're looking at time to market. And Copilot, from what we've seen, could be a real could be as impactful to the industry as the early no code / low code was, which is, an order of magnitude faster in shipping things. The trick that has been now uncovered is, how do we deal with a number of things? For example, licensing, right? If we're using all the open source as a code base, as a pool of data that my LLMs are analyzing to get to this code produced, am I using the right license? Can I be in trouble if I don't license this code correctly? That is the thing, right? Some of you maybe are not technical, but for example, if you come into open source and you use someone's software that is open source, it may be, for example, if you inspire yourself in code that is GPL, you may need to also turn your software open source, right? And so licensing has implications, and they were designed for purpose. And so these are some of the hurdles that are still being overcome as we speak. I think that those are details. I think in the future, I think we're starting to build the future with these things. These will have consequences for business like mine, but I think will be enablers. I'm terribly excited about the way that transformers are being applied to software development. And so we have things that we're looking at. but we're doing it properly. Because at the end of the day, also, that what we really need to focus on, there's always new technology, there's always new flashy rings and whistles and bells and all. But you really, the job of the entrepreneur is to focus on the problem. Am I really helping the customer and their problem with this technology? If yes, then great. If not, then you focus on the fundamental. And the fundamental is really, am I helping them standardize software quality? Yes. Am I doing it better because I'm using Copilot or any other piece of technology? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Otherwise, focus on the fundamentals.
Excellent. Any other questions, please? You may raise your hand. Okay, Jamie, I have a question. I was going through your site and I saw in the front page you had some major companies like TopTal and PayPal as one of your clients. Can you like tell us a scenario, like how exactly do you help TopTal or PayPal? Is it just in the code review, or was there some specifics in which you help these companies improve?
So there's so specific to some of these customers, I obviously can divulge, but what we've done for some of these companies was they came either to us or we reached out to them, and they were looking for a code quality automation solution, or they were using it. Some of these companies, they start small. They start using us at a small scale, just for a team, and they'll really like the product. And over time, that scales to larger and more teams. And so what typically happens, and it happens in the case of some of the companies that we have there on the landing page, is they love the product. A team loves the product. They start adopting the product really well. And then other teams start using it. They typically adopt the product because they have no solution, or they're not happy with some of the solutions they're using today, or they built, let's say, a homegrown script to analyze code and it's not really doing well, or they have to maintain that and it's painful. And so they want to bring more they want to bring a third-party tool so that they don't have to manage that. And so that happens to some of those companies that we have on the landing page. Yeah, that was the case.
Right. Jamie, I have a question which is more related, not so much related about your business, but it's more related to the perspective where the students are, our students are at this stage. So most of them joined this. This is probably the first entrepreneurship course or program. I don't think a couple of years back such a program ever existed, because people always said that nobody can teach you entrepreneurship. It's something it's either in you or not. But then we are still attempting to teach entrepreneurship here, and as we see that it's only to give certain exposure. And one of the things that our students face is which idea to build on. So they iterate on different ideas and finally come up with something for their project. But in your case, it seems to me that that was never a question. It was not that you were thinking about which idea to build a company on, but rather based on your own experience, you identified a problem with coding in an area that you were very interested. So can you give us a walk through how this idea was born, and also if you have any suggestions to students, should they look for an idea, or the idea should just come from their daily experiences to them?
I would like to add something to Anish's question. I always tell to my students, a company is not like a club. So, we are a very good friend. Let's start a company. The course is just finishing. We need to keep in touch. And I always say to my students, look, it's not like a club, a country club, or a club that you want, that you have. But you need to, when you are starting a company, you also have to find partners that complement you in terms of skills, and not people equal to you. Sometimes you don't sympathize so much, but you trust this guy, you think he's really good, and you can pursue this. So I would like to complement and add this thing of having a partners to start a company.
That makes a lot of sense, and that is indeed very very important. And starting with the last part that you mentioned, Fernanda, I am very lucky to have my co-founder, João Cresceria, and today to have an amazing exec team that really supports the company, supports me. And I have friends of mine that started companies and they're solo founders, so only one founder, and it gets really lonely over time. It gets really lonely because there's so many decisions, there's a lot of weight, you know. So I think there's something that should be demystified, and it kind of is, but we tend to forget these things. I like to demystify many times the idea of the brilliant idea, the brilliant kind of light bulb moment. The idea that the company started with is very different from where we are today. It's very different. We deal with software in a way, but how we started, what we thought we were going to sell to a particular person, with a value prop, has nothing to do with what we do today. And so I think the ideas are worth close to zero. It's the execution, it's the resilience, it's you keeping with that and not quitting and you know, sustaining yourself to pursue that. Sometimes having no arguments really to in your favor to support that. But it's really that resilience and talking to people and learning more, focusing on the problem that builds that. So I don't think I was I don't think I had a brilliant idea. In fact, you know, it's very general as I look back. But what we did was we were very resilient. We still are. That's the skill that we have, that I have. When it comes to nurture versus nature into entrepreneurship and whether it can be taught or not, you know, I'll share my. You kind of didn't ask me that, but I will go there, I guess. I will say this: someone made they put some diodes in the head of entrepreneurs, and they start measuring kind of, you know, brain reactions and stimuli to different things, right? And what they found, there was a study that found that the brain response that entrepreneurs have when interacting with their venture, with their startup, is similar to the stimuli that parents have when dealing with bonding with their children. Okay. So when entrepreneurs say that this is my baby, in their minds, it literally feels like their baby. And there's so many parallels to that, right? So when we think, well, can someone learn to be a parent? Can someone read in books how to be a parent? For those that are parents, I have a 18-month daughter. I read books. I didn't know anything about being a parent. I made many mistakes still. So I guess yes. I think there's things that you can learn, but it's not by learning that you'll achieve success. My opinion today is actually by doing. You become a parent by having a child and actually being a parent. The same thing with entrepreneurship. You become an entrepreneur by actually doing and making the mistakes. The more mistakes, there is a person that I call a mentor today, Paul Rosado from OutSystems, and he said this one time. He told me, "You're not making any of mistakes." And that's so true. Like if you're making mistakes and you're learning, that's it. You're at the genesis of entrepreneurship because you're learning, you're making mistakes and you're iterating. And so, you know, I think it could be somehow accelerated. I think it can be, there's catalyzers, there's learnings, right? But even with those learnings, you can still fail. So you need to actually do it and put your hands there, you know, in the dirt.
That's good, yeah. Any other questions from students? Anish, do you have any other questions or should we close this inspirational talk?
I think all my questions have been very well answered with Jamie, and really it's one of the most interesting sessions because there was such a frank conversation, and it was really what we want, because we can try to communicate to students theory as much as we want, but it's Jamie, it's real life experiences from entrepreneurs like you. That's what really enhances our course and what our students really find most valuable. So yeah, I
completely
don't have
agree.
any
Yeah.
further questions.
Thank you very much for accepting and coming today and explaining and talking about Codacy. It was really inspiring and really good. Thank you very
Excellent.
much.
Thank you for the invitation. Happy to help any other time if I can be helpful. Is jaime@codacy.com. Feel free to send me emails. I will. Sometimes I tend some time to reply because I have a lot of emails that come in every day, but over time I will try to address every single one. So yeah, happy to help.
Thank you very much.